Work it, make it, do it, make sense.
Hello, and welcome to Escape the Serverless Cage and Embrace IT Automation. Embrace would be the French word to say it. I'm French. This is me. I work for CleverCloud. There is a lot of bearded people at CleverCloud. I'm the one with the red circle. I used to work for Couchbase and Nuxeo. Now I've been working for CleverCloud since Devoxx France, which was a month ago. I'm one of the few people that started a conference by mounting one booth, Couchbase booth, and dismantling the CleverCloud booth. That was fun. And you can find me on Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn, whatever, with this handle right there. So I work for CleverCloud. What does CleverCloud do? We basically take your code and make sure it runs in production. It's a fairly easy concept. Some people call this platform as a service. You just git push your code, we will build your code, we will deploy your code, we will provide you blue-green deployment, automatic scalability, horizontal or vertical. And the good thing about this is that it is IT automation, so you don't have to write anything. We automate your code. You don't have to use some API or SDK, or it's your code automated by our robot army. That's just how it is. You don't have to learn anything. So that's what we do. We have like 20,000 more applications running on our cloud right now for a team of five person, technical person, handling those 20,000 applications, which is a good indicator that our robot army works. And we do see lots of code, on support team, and gives us a good idea of what people do, what people maybe should do more than shouldn't do. So we see a lot of things happening, and we give back to the community by all the experience we've acquired by supporting our customers. We give talks, but not today. This is a very specific sponsored talk, so I'm going to be all vendorish, and this is going to be a slightly opinionated talk about what is serverless, because I do IT automation. I'm going to talk about serverless. Who here has heard about serverless? Not everybody, okay, fine, which is good. And so serverless, depending on who you ask, can be a complete different answer. If I ask to Adrian Crockford what is serverless, basically he says that if you can spin up a machine or an application in under a second, basically, you are serverless. CleverCloud is not serverless. We use VM. It takes us 4 seconds to have a fully deployed and ready VM, which is not too bad. VM have a bad reputation, but 4 seconds is perfectly acceptable, especially if you do blue-green deployment. There's no downtime. It's fine. So we are platform as a service, but not as fast, so not serverless. That's one way to define serverless. There's another trend on serverless that's called BaaS, Backend as a service, and it has some problems. I come from Couchbase. I used to work in the database world, and in the database world, latency is extremely important, and this is a very good latency example. If you do Backend as a service, it means that you have your backend on someone else's cloud. Usually when you have a backend, you have an application connected to that backend. So you're going to try to deploy it as close to your backend as possible, because there is one latency that you cannot diminish, is the size of the network cable between you and your database, right? So if you do backend as a service, know that you will have some latency because your computer, your application is on another network than your database. Unless some people do IT automation and let you deploy whatever you want with other backends. So if you use Mongo Atlas, you have a Mongo online, that's great. And then you have another application somewhere else, not on the same network. Latency is bad. From my database experience, that's what we try to avoid. And there's another issue is backend as a service. And that's where do you put your data? And it's a very sensible topic right now. It's about data privacy. You don't want to host your data anywhere. In Europe, there's a law coming up called the DGRP, and this will basically tell you that sensitive information should be stored locally, either on your machine or at least in your country. And backend as a service, they don't necessarily have a data center in every possible country, especially in Europe. So, backend as a service, privacy issues. So that's one way of defining serverless, backend as a service. And then the other more common way that we have these days with AWS Lambda is function as a service, which suffer from pretty much the same issue. That was a latency example. Same problem. You have something run on the cloud. It's far away. Your data is far away. Your application is somewhere else. There's a network latency in the middle. To avoid latency, you need to run your stuff at the same place. That's just how it is. Again, it's the size of the network cable. There's no other way around it. So function as a service has this issue. This is the most important slide of the conference, with the best content. But as it's function as a service, it's a complete black box. So you have no idea what it is, what it runs. That's another problem for function as a service. Usually it's an open source project, and then you have a proprietary API on top of that open source project. You have no idea what it is, and you have to use that stupid API without knowing what's going on. You cannot SSH on the machine. You don't have access to the logs. You cannot debug. Some very painful stuff. So if you don't have access to this, at least you would like to test these things. And testing function as a service is a complete nightmare because basically if you don't deploy it on the function as a service cloud, then you cannot really test it. So you have to mock the whole testing API. Like there's a GitHub project called AWS mock, and it's painful, really painful. Imagine mocking the whole API just to test. So it's very sad. Another thing that I don't understand about function as a service, we all do application. Usually there's an application that's database going on. There's an HTTP, so there's a TCP connection. And the serverless way would be ask for a function to be executed. That function will ask to a database from scratch because you're deploying something new. So you would do another TCP handshake. Couldn't find a better picture. And a TCP handshake is very expensive. Usually when you connect to a database, you create a connection pool and you reuse your connection. If you do function as a service, you create a new application all the time, which is extremely expensive. And again, for real-time database people, it's not how things should work. It's not how things should be. So in some cases, it makes complete sense. It's not a real-time application. You're just doing like some crunching, Hadoop crunching. You send one request on a function as a service that's a fat cloud with lots of compute power. Here it makes sense. For a normal application that's like a web application, which is, I assume, what most people do, there's a database involved. You don't want to recreate that connection all the time. It's just very expensive. And now there's a lot of people that tell you about function as a service. There's nothing new to learn. We support every languages. We have an SDK for every languages. So saying this is actually saying that you have something to learn. If there's an SDK for every languages, then there's a proprietary API. You need to learn that API. It's something new, and you need to modify your code to make sure that it actually runs on that cloud. So there's a Rampup that's painful, which, again, it's really easy to find animated image of bad things happening. I discovered a whole world of bad things happening during this slide deck. So, yeah, you deploy something. You have to learn that API. That API doesn't necessarily work on someone else's cloud. So that gives you into a lock-in position where if you need to get out of one serverless vendor, you will need to rewrite your code so that it works on another vendor, which is what people call a lock-in situation. And if that's fine with you, that's great. If you think you'll get married to one particular serverless vendor and be fine for the rest of your life, that's beautiful. But that doesn't happen all the time, sadly. Such is life. So serverless, function as a service, it feels to me like it's just a stateless architecture, but that's managed by someone else with very poor design choices. If you ask me what serverless is, that's what I'm going to tell you. But again, this is a slightly opinionated talk about serverless. So take that with caution. Do I hate serverless? There's some very good reason to do serverless. One of these is collaboration, and I will give you one example. Google has this great image recognition service. And it's based on machine learning, so the more it works, the more image you send it, the better it becomes. I spoke to a friend, they have a startup in London, it's called Cinet. It's a great startup, and they use the image recognition API, and the error rate that was acceptable at the very beginning was around 2 or 3%. So if you want to go on 2 or 3% error, it's a slower call. If you accept a 20% error margin, then it's much faster. And basically, after 2 or 3 years of training the same algorithm with lots of photos, collaborating with everybody else, then you become much more efficient. And because of that, you went from a 3% margin error to 20% and was much faster. So serverless, if you need to share or collaborate with other people, especially mutualized data or resources, it's great, especially on the resources side of things. Like, would you want to pay for a very large computing power all the time and use it like each time you need to run that function? Doesn't necessarily make sense all the time. So that's also why serverless is great. Not only collaboration, but there's a scale thing. The other reason serverless is great is that it's managed, it's no ops, as people say, it's magical because you'd never touch a server. The word serverless is extremely misguiding because there's always a server somewhere, but because you don't manage it, you can call it serverless, which is probably actually the best definition of serverless. There is a server, but you just don't manage it. It's magical. And that's pretty much the same thing that happens when you use IT automation. The goal of IT automation is for you to just write code and then no ops, automate everything. So you don't manage any server, which is the good thing about serverless that you might want to do when you do normal application. The other good thing is that there is no black box. We automate the code that you're writing, so you know exactly what's running. You can test it. It's just about automating things. It's very close to the DevOps culture, right? You probably have heard of Ansible, of Chef, of Puppets. You use these to automate all your tasks. And what CleverCloud proposes is that you just have to write code. You don't have to write an Ansible script. You don't have to write a Chef or a Puppet recipe. You don't have to write a Docker file or Docker Compose. You just push your code and it works. That's the beauty of CleverCloud and IT automation. And you don't have to learn anything new because, again, it's just code. So the Rampup. So there is very few successful image of people using ramps. Just let it be known. So the Rampup is less hard because, again, you don't have to learn anything new. We just automate your code. And you can, of course, use whatever runtime you want because, again, you decide what you run. And that's what CleverCloud support by default. Of course, we support other things. You just need to ping the support to ask us. Support for Elixir. I know Elixir is a common framework that people start using. Kafka is not there, but we support Kafka, RabbitMQ, lots of interesting things. So that was a very shameful plug for CleverCloud and IT automation. If you want to try CleverCloud, by default, when you subscribe, you have 20 credits. If you use this coupon, you'll have more credits. Just write Devoxx UK as coupon, and you'll get more and more credits. So that's it. We have a booth at Devoxx. Come at the booth. We have the best T-shirts and the best stickers. That's one of them. Thanks for listening. And if you have any question, we have like 2 minutes left, so I'll happily answer. Thank you. Yes. So we have 27 applications. The question was, how do we monitor things? We have 27 applications, 200 new applications every week, additional. We monitor everything. That's a decent amount of stuff to store. We use something called WAP10. It's a Hadoop-based geospatial time series database, and it just scales, really. So we have all our daemons running on every machine that just sends data on RabbitMQ, and RabbitMQ just send everything back to our Hadoop machine, and we use WAP10 to do the graphs and everything, and to send alerts. And when something bad happens, because of that, we know something bad happened, we can restart your application, we can scale it automatically as well. That's how we do it. So it's called WAP10. It's a Hadoop time series by a French company called Citizen Data, and that's, to me, the only extremely scalable time series solution. Again, I come from the database world. You can do time series with Cassandra, you can do it with InfluxDB, you can do it with Couchbase, pretty much anything. If you want something that really scales and time series, there's lots and lots and lots of data. Hadoop is a great solution to do so. So it's a verticalized Hadoop solution to do time series. There's an API to collect all those logs. Yeah, if you want to get your your application's metrics and the machine it runs on metrics, there's an API to get all of that. When you connect to CleverCloud, there's a single page web app. which is just an Angular app that calls the REST API. We also have a command line tool, and they both use the REST API. So everything's available using the REST API. The next person speaking after me is called Tugdual. He's a former Couchbase employee, and then Mongo, and then Mapper, and his talk is about IoT, and it's great. And you know, if you don't know what to do, it's a decent talk. Thank you very much, and see you at the booth, I guess. Thank you.